I'm talking today to Herman Hunis, who is the CEO and founder of MXit. Herman, describe to me what the company does.
Well, in short, MXit is a social network and instant messaging based on mobile phones, and it was developed in South Africa, specifically for emerging markets such as Africa, obviously.
And how did the idea come about for doing it?
It's quite a long, very long path that we followed. It started off initially as a massive multiplayer mobile game in the early 2000s. It went through a number of iterations, and eventually in 2005 we launched a mobile instant messaging system that today evolved to much more than just social mobile messaging, but more social networking.
And how many users have you got globally?
Our registered user base is about 30 million, and most of those users come from South Africa and Africa.
So how many of them come from South Africa?
I don't have the exact numbers, but it's the vast majority of our user base comes from Africa.
Okay, and how many are in sub-Saharan African countries?
I would say at least about 23, 24 million of those.
And when you go into those countries and set up MXit, who are you working with? What sort of partners? And
well, you must understand that being a social network, you not necessarily have to set up something. These sort of things just happen. It's only when you get to the monetization phase where you need to engage with the mobile network operators, ad agencies, and so forth.
So what's the business model? How does it work financially?
The software is free, you download it for free, messaging is free, and we generate revenue out of advertising and content sales, and we're also in the process of kickstarting m-commerce.
I understand you feel very strongly about education. Give me some examples of how MXit is used in an educational context.
We've used a number of, or employed a number of initiatives teaching maths to kids using MXit. We've had teachers helping kids with various subjects on MXit, and I think there are a number of other avenues to be explored in, especially the educational arena.
How are media owners using MXit?
This is a new sort of phenomena that media owners starting to embark on this very specific form of new media. We've been selling content such as news for about 2 years now, where we charge the users a very small amount of money to read the news. And I think once you have a situation where data cost starts to go down, video becomes obviously very attractive.
How does your value chain work? In other words, who are you paying what to, and what income do you get at the end of it in round terms?
Well, I think the important thing is to understand that we created our own economy to make sure that we can have an almost seamless transaction path for the user. So the user will send a pre-generated SMS to a short code that we earn. We will credit the user with credits, which we call MXit Moolah, and with that the user can buy stuff off our platform. We acquire the content from content providers, so we have to pay them, and the rest of the money then obviously comes to us, and we have to cover the cost for various other things then.
Okay, and what in round terms again is the revenues of the business? How big is the entity you've created?
Unfortunately, I cannot share those numbers with you because we are a private company, and that sort of information is fairly
no problem.
Confidential.
But let's strike it another way. How many people work for MXit? Which is another way of cutting the same egg.
We have about 140 people, of which I think if you look at the sort of cost, most of the costs are towards software engineers.
Okay, and I understand Naspers bought a share in the company.
That's correct.
And how is that relationship working?
Very well. I think they are a very progressive media company. They have made substantial investments all over the world. China is probably their flagship investment in QQ. They also got investments in Russia, and Eastern Europe. So a very progressive company, and it's always good to have a progressive media company as a co-shareholder.
And in terms of going out to the rest of Africa, I understand you said earlier, of course it just spreads. You know, I was giving the example of the number of users in Kenya, and they've arrived without you needing to assist them in any way. What's the plan, though, in terms of putting feet on the ground to actually kind of monetize it in a number of countries? And, you know, what are the countries, and, you know, where are you thinking of going?
I think the important thing to remember here is that there needs to be a number of parameters present before you will have a successful uptake in a country. Things such as there needs to be sufficient GPRS or 3G coverage. You need to have a certain population, phone population, the right demographic of users. The bulk of your users are normally between 19 and 25 years old. So I think those sort of parameters needs to be present before you can even hope to have some growth there. But once those parameters are present in a certain country, then obviously you need to do some localization. You need to make sure that there are not obstacles in terms of the users understanding what it's all about. And once you have a sufficient user growth, then obviously the next phase is to start looking at getting content that's applicable for that particular country or segment. And yeah, then it is just a normal process.
But in terms of people understanding how to use MXit, is it users teach users, or?
Yes, I think that was a major obstacle for us in South Africa when we launched in 2005. It took a while before the users actually managed to understand. You need to set up internet access on your phone, you need to download an application, you need to register, you need to log in. But once you have that going, and once you have a certain number of people that are capable of doing that, then obviously it will just spread like virus.
What's the sort of critical mass point? What was the point in South Africa where you got to the point where it just suddenly took off?
We started very slowly. I remember the days of having 50, 100 registrations per day, growing very slowly, and then you get to the inflection point where it just goes from 100 to 500 to 1,000 to 4,000 to 16,000 to 20,000 a day. And I think once you've reached that stage, then it becomes a bit easier. Then you just need to make sure that you can retain those users. You can offer content that are relevant to them. You can entice them to come back. And I think that's a continual challenge for us, to make sure that we keep on innovating, we keep on pushing the boundaries. So I don't think we're scared of trying out new things, and if it fails, it fails. It's
in content terms, what is the most popular content on the platform?
I think that changes all the time. Chat rooms used to be very, very popular. We have.
You were saying chat rooms for dating, as it turned out.
Yes. Well, it wasn't destined to be that, but it evolved into almost like full-on dating. But if you look at what is the biggest content driver at this stage, it's actually multiplayer games. And we recently opened up our platform to third-party entrepreneurs, software developers, to develop software. And one company in South Africa actually developed a multiplayer game, a very successful game, and we hope to see a number of other initiatives using our open API.
What kind of phones do you have to have in order to be able to use it? Is it Java-enabled phones plus smartphones, or is it?
It's Java-enabled phones. I think the last count was we support 2,500 different phones. It doesn't have to be a smartphone. We support very low-end phones, and I think if you look at the phones that are entering the market right now, basic models are Java-enabled internet phones, and that's all we need. And then also our software is available on high-end phones such as the iPhone, the Blackberries, Windows Mobile and so forth.
So anyone can get involved in social networking.
Absolutely. It's we also have a fairly comprehensive PC offering, which is one of our latest initiatives. Many of our users actually ask us to have a PC client. It's much easier to type on a PC than on a small keyboard, and that's been extremely successful.
Lastly, if you were to choose 3 African countries that met the criteria that you were talking about earlier, which would be the 3?
I think Kenya is obviously always been a very progressive country. If you look at the success of M-Pesa in Kenya, so I think Kenya is obviously one of the countries that we're quite keen on. Nigeria has been a huge potential, huge population, also fairly progressive, and a number of business opportunities there. And then I think it's between countries such as Ghana, Cameroon, and maybe even lower down to Tanzania or DRC. So, but the definite 2 is Kenya and Nigeria.
Herman Hunis, thank you very much indeed for talking to me today.
You're most welcome. Thank you.